Ethically Questionable is electrified by Polestar, the Swedish electric performance brand created to accelerate the shift to zero tailpipe emissions. Their approach to transparency means every car they sell has a carbon impact report so you can drive with a conscience. Hey guys, welcome back to Ethically Questionable with me, your host, Jamila Brown. I am so excited about today's episode because, guys, I mentioned this a lot in the episode, but I need you all to know up top, I studied art history in university back in college, back in my younger days, and I've always considered myself a little baby, like connoisseur, aficionado of the creative arts, even though I absolutely do not work in this sector anymore. Well, maybe a little bit, but not properly, and not at all like our amazing guest today, who is Marine Tanguy, the founder of the world's first B Corp art agency, author of the book A Visual Detox. She's a mom, she's a policy influencer, she's an architect, she does it all, right? This woman is a total badass. And when I was thinking about getting her onto the show and what art and sustainability have to do with each other on a more thought-provoking intellectual level, I was floored by all the things that Marine was sharing with us, right? From the ways that different artists create eco-installations to drive conversation and culture shift, to the way that what we see around us actually just kind of subconsciously influences, subconsciously influences the way that we navigate the world. It's also very interconnected, these visual cues, right? And Marine Tanguy's an absolute expert in how it all works. So having the chance to chat with her, drive around in the car and hear it all, whilst also think about beautiful art was incredible. So I'm so excited for you guys to listen to this episode. I'm going to stop blathering on. I'm going to get into the car with Marine Tanguy on A Visual Detox. Let's go.
If I bump into them, I don't have a driving license. So I can't be held accountable for ruining their big cars. So they definitely step away from me big time.
It's so funny. Okay, well, thanks for coming onto the podcast.
I've been most excited I've ever been to be on a podcast. Also, I love you're the
really
proof
sweet.
that one can actually multitask.
Yeah, people keep saying they're really impressed with the driving and the talking at the same time. But I am American, so I've been driving for a long time, and I also talk a lot. So this is kind of like second nature.
But I do most of my calls on my bicycle, so I probably can connect through.
You do it on the bicycle.
Yes,
I
have the kids on the big baboo, and I do my calls then. And when on the baboo you can put your phone. So when I print the video for people, they probably have a heart attack.
You do it on video.
Because they can see me paddling through London. But I am like you. I grew up on an island where there's more cycling road than actual driving roads. So I think cycling is second nature. I do it without even thinking. So probably the same as with you with driving.
Yeah, I quite like cycling. I used to, when Ellie was little, I would cycle just like you. I had the little baby seat on the back. And we would cycle everywhere, around Chiswick and West London. And then one day, somebody stole my bicycle with the baby seat on the back. I was like, how
Which is a crime.
evil are you to steal a bicycle?
Actually, I've never heard that because I've always felt you were protected if you had a baby.
No, with the baby seat.
Yeah, no, that's crime. That's criminal. It's your vehicle for freedom. It's like you need an emotional connection. You're growing a lot attached to it.
Exactly.
So it is a crime, guys. Don't steal bicycles.
Stop stealing bicycles. But speaking of babies, I actually was thinking on my way over here how I met you. And I remember, I'll be interested to hear what you think, how we met. But my memory is I went to this event in Parliament.
Yes.
I think it was some apprenticeships in the creative industries conference or something. Yes. And you were in the line in front of me and you had your buggy, your stroller, and your baby in it. And I just remember thinking who is this boss bitch bringing her baby to Parliament? I love this. And we didn't talk or anything. But then I think the next day, one of my friends had reposted your story of you being at Parliament with your baby on Instagram. And I was like, I love this woman. I think I added you. And then you added me back. And then you were like, I saw you yesterday. Let's get coffee.
We swiped right and left and with my friends.
Swiped right.
It's like it was dating heaven.
Yeah. Fair. Okay, so let's talk about your job. So you obviously run an incredible art agency, MTArt. You are an author. You're at Visual Detox, I think just before Ivy was born, so 2.5 years ago. Yeah. You might have another book on the way, I believe. Yes. You also are at the heart of so many impact conversations and communities globally. How these three things become one for you?
I think it all goes back to, and I was just saying for you, where we grew up. I grew up on a small island in France. So I grew up in a very privileged visual environment, which is you walk out of your house and within 5 minutes you're in front of the sea. You cycle to school through fields, and it's very beautiful. Like, people spend money to go on holidays in this island.
Yeah.
And that's in a context where 4 out of 5 billboards in the UK are in working class areas. So think not a single billboard. In fact, McDonald's doesn't have the rights to be on my island. It's like one of those places where like they reject anything that will be around this level of advertising.
Nice.
And therefore understanding the link between mental well-being and visual. If I felt not great on that day, but I sat by the sea, I just could see, even very young, that I felt better.
Yeah.
And I think art for me is an integration of that larger thinking. And that's why I always think at large about our visual environment. And I'm like a huge fan of a woman called Octavia Hill, who was made destitute at 9 years old on the streets in the 19th century. But thanks to the fact that she had learned to read and write before that, was able to unroll under John Ruskin. And when they were about to build houses in Hyde Park, Hampstead Heath and Regent's Park, she opposed it, saying that when she didn't have a home, going to a park made her feel so much better. So she followed the National Trust. And I think that's relationship with the civic space is something that I really cherish deeply. And my relationship with visual is civic. It's access to visuals that make us feel better, to visual environment that will make us feel better. Like, I was at the fountains on the Hyde Park corner, when you have this diners fountain where all the kids play with the kids, because obviously it was the heat wave on Monday.
Yeah.
And every single person from every single cultural background is there. We're all mixing. There's no difference amongst ourselves.
Yeah.
And I do believe that's the power of shared spaces. And that's what I want to do with Public Art Project. It's a place of conversation. It's a place where we all come to it. But again, like the fontaines, and I'm sure you could imagine how insanely busy this was on that day.
Yeah.
I just love the fact that we were all side by side.
Yeah.
There's just no difference.
No
and it's
socioeconomic barriers.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're all together.
And it's a joy of civic spaces.
Yeah.
And I think cities, in a place where we have less and less space, and obviously the rent increase, like cherishing our civic spaces and making sure those are really inspiring nature-wise and artistically and architecture-wise is really important.
Yeah. Do you know, I don't know if I ever told you this, but you kind of do my dream job, because
come on, work with us.
Let me know when you're hiring again. I'll apply. But when I was in uni, I studied art history, and I did my senior thesis on public art in Philadelphia specifically. Yeah, because Philadelphia have one of the best probably the best public art programs.
Jump the podcast.
Yes,
just jump on board.
Forget this. But they have one of the best public art programs in America, because back in the 1800s, like, one of the mayors or governors, whatever, put in this clause into all new building developments in the city that if you want to develop in Philadelphia, 1% of your budget has to go to public art.
Yep.
And that's been in place now for years. And as a result, they have like a booming like public art collection in Philadelphia.
Yeah, I think that's the dream. So I talk a lot about visual pollution, which is back to that stats on the billboards being sadly across the board. The poorer you are, the more money is made from your eyes.
Crazy though.
Well, I think it's basically they get a higher volume, a higher frequency of commercial images, which we know through many endless studies are really bad for their mental health. Let's not even discuss what's actually on those ads, because that would be gambling and all the stuff, right? Meanwhile, privileged areas where you picked me up are full of like lovely parks and
lots of greenery.
Exactly, and lovely architecture and the rest. So I think what would be great is to unify the narrative of Philadelphia rather than having pockets of like, Canada does really well, Switzerland does very well, like a bit of the Nordics. Yeah. But having a place where this is more unified. But it's the first time where the Supreme Court in Switzerland ruled against visual pollution last year, and we are seeing a unifying understanding, a bit like clean air. And actually, we spoke about that, but we're on Euston Road, one of the most polluted streets in London. But you see, the idea of clean air, like several years back, or air pollution, was something that was still very much niche. When obviously now, sadly, we have to like understand how big of a deal that is in the context of our cities. But I think visual pollution is finally picking up.
I have a question on like when this clicked for you, like, because I appreciate, growing up near the beach, you're feeling these things, but of course you're not like a 6-year-old child being like really recognizing like, hey, there's an issue here, so like, was there like a moment where like you really realized like this is, your passion and this is what you could do to like have positive impact on the world?
I think we share something in common, that I can't stand unfairness, and I think my husband is the same.
Yes,
I really get triggered. We love Will, and it seems that we have the same gut. My gut reacts really badly as a gut health level, to be honest. Yeah. So I had to identify, probably with my love of the arts and the creative sector, and why my gut was so strongly against so many of the operating system of that sector. So I think the articulation came after I coming across inequalities or unfairness that I really struggle with, like who gets to be a talent, who gets to be an artist, who gets to have creative expression, who gets to not have it, who gets to be represented, who gets to survive. Like, like, again, 97% of the sculptures in London are men on pedestals. Most of this is depicting violence.
That's crazy.
Like, think about how much care we need in our life towards grief, towards us going through difficult milestones, towards like endless moments like postpartums and others, or recovery. There's not a single monument that is about care. And I think that just shows you that so much of what artistically is represented feels unfair, feels not representative of us. So I think it's less of a big moment, and it's more a series of moments where I'm like, that doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
And I have this kind of 6-year-old autistic brain, and if something doesn't make sense, I really stick on it.
Yeah.
I can't just walk past it.
Yeah.
To this day, I think it probably is irritating to everybody else around, but I will stick on that problem for a while until there's a solution. And I will not just accept something unfair for the sake of it.
But going back to this idea of like our visual environment and how I guess we need to deprogram from some of the negative parts of it. I guess the flip side is, and this goes to all of the amazing public artwork that you guys are doing, is that the good stuff can really positively influence our ability to imagine what the world can be.
Yeah.
And I think there's this great thing that you said to me. It was like, you can't change a world that you can't imagine. Like, you can't move towards something that you can't see or visualize yourself.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit more about like how you've seen that play out and just what that sort of means to you in your work?
I think with sustainability specifically, I think we have an imagination crisis where, like, if you close your eyes when you're driving, do not close your eyes. A lot of sustainability is being spoken about in terms of fear mongering.
Yeah.
Or eco-grief, which is a type of movement artistically, but I probably lean in more towards solar punk.
Solar punk.
Oh,
I love that.
Could you believe this? In my little white dress, I will come up with that word. You did not see that coming. Solar punk is sustainability and joy together.
Okay.
But it's a collective artist imagining that future that is therefore joyful with sustainability at the heart. And I think that just shows that, like, artists have the power to reimagine a future. And you've seen that also with how data sadly does not convince people like emotions does.
No,
and
yeah, you're
David
right.
Attenborough is obviously a brilliant example of someone who's done that very well. We were very lucky to do all the land art for him with the puppet for Apple TV.
Amazing.
Onion Communion Truth is a fantastic movie as well. There's also like great public artists like Agnès Denès. In 1982, she did 2 acres of wheat planted next to Wall Street.
Yeah.
And I think just again, like interventions like this in New York. Yes, interventions that are really interesting on a public art level. But I feel I'm a big believer that obviously we memorize 60% of what we see as opposed to 15% of what we hear. So what you see is so crucial. So having visual artists on board to paint that picture, to make it real, to imagine that future, to also engage communities and people collectively to be part of that picture is really important. But again, I'm more biased in that speech.
Fair enough. Who are some of your other favorite artists? You've named a lot already, but are there any that you're working with now that you're really excited about in terms of this sort of environmental, social aspect? Or
I think there's many. So Ed Bertinsky, which I'm sure you know, is an artist we're lucky to work with. I mean, Ed Bertinsky is always about giving you the scale of the issue. I find his work on AI super interesting.
Oh, I've not seen that actually.
Because it's really, as you know, I think, I'm sure you're in the same position where that whole rush to AI was the consideration of the sustainable resources and the impact it's creating, and also the ethics around the poor countries who are, with poorly paid people who are basically helping on the imagery and reconciliation of data is very problematic.
Yeah.
So he will be capturing at scale basically the resources that are being used on our planets, to really giving you again and drilling that that this is a resource problem. The book that it's actually Ed Conway is a dear friend of Ed Bertinsky, but History of Materiality is a very good book on this, because all of us like to think we're material, but it's a constant reminder that click that you made, and if they did digitally, is actually connected to a huge amount of resources that's being used. And therefore, the understanding that it's not an immaterial action, it's a deeply material action that drives all the geopolitical conflicts that we're currently witnessing.
It's so interesting because I feel like in so many of our other like fast decision making things, it's that same sort of like block, right? Like if you're buying a piece of fast fashion clothing or if you're doing whatever, you're just saying it's like something easy, accessible, an easy click, whatever, but you've got no sort of like context or comprehension in that moment of like the huge sort of like undertakings behind it that are shaping the world.
Well, they know exactly how they do, and they actually use visuals to do that, because visuals travel much faster to the brain than words, which means that you don't have as much time to analyze and comprehend what you are consuming as a media. And that also means, therefore, that as such, you'll be in a place where you will be directly reactive. And, so much of it is designed so that you quickly act on your impulse. You don't analyze it, which is why, as you know, I'm a big, big believer in visual critical thinking, in visual literacy, in really understanding how do you build that distance between the content you just serve visually and the action you're quickly about to make that is political or commercial or belief-wise. We're about to see Delphine's work. This is really nice because that was actually for Earth Day.
Oh, the house,
The house, which is adored by kids, all using recycled textile and fabrics. And also, like, if you see it from the other side, it's overseeing the canal, overseeing the steps. And it's an ode to nature in cities, because London is the only city where you have one tree per person and you have so much access to nature per se. And I'm sure it's an ode to dandelions. It's basically a burst
That's
of...
so beautiful.
And you will see kids absolutely adore it. What a brilliant example of a civic space again. Like, I'm sure you know how much the Fontaines are loved by kids too. You have students going through it. You have like this art exhibition right now running through King's Cross. I mean, it's a brilliant example of what a square or civic space should actually stand for.
Do you find a challenge or tension sometimes between like the art that you and your artists want to create, put out in the world, and I guess the people or brands who are funding it? Because I mean, this is beautiful and incredible and has such an amazing point of view and a strong sort of social and environmental narrative. Is that hard to get commissioned?
I think in general, we've done 300 projects. So I think it's obviously harder to start, for sure. It's always hard to articulate the value of the arts. It's interesting because I think culture is something that we all agree is valuable. Audiences have never been so peak high, but no one wants to fund it. Like, you've got major public cuts since 2010. Sadly, most practitioners are still living below the minimum wage. And basically, it's always an economical challenge. But in reality, we know how much it is valued and how much it adds value to our society. So my big job as MTArt for the last 11 years, and so much what I do academically as well, is to constantly show that economically it adds value. And to constantly be the one that has the tough financial conversation so that the artists are paid, the projects happen, and that value can be delivered. So I'm used to very uncomfortable conversation, but they have been successful. I think as a B Corp, I don't see McDonald's approaching me tomorrow.
How much of the art that you guys are doing is permanent versus, like, I don't want to say necessarily like a campaign, but maybe for a specific moment?
I would say a good 60% is now permanent.
That's incredible.
I wanted to move away from the PR stunt. Because, as you know, there's questions of art washing. There's question of just a bit of a social media click.
You're giving me so many good words today. Solar punk, art washing.
Solar punk is it. I have a funny, I was invited to an activist gathering that I won't quote because of the activism side that they do this week. But I did arrive because I had a book talk just before in the most conservative dressing in this setup on Wednesday evening. And this is definitely the kind of community that wants to destroy and challenge massively the system. And it was really interesting because I have a part of me that's activist, but I am clearly a B Corp baby. Where like I want to work with the system to change things.
Yeah.
And I believe that given the amounts of power that's being held within that system, I want to make sure that I unlock all those different power players to collectively change things with us.
Yeah.
But it was interesting, to your point on solar punk. I was a little mouse on Wednesday evening because I was like, I'm potentially the person that has the most mild opinion of the evening, which I'm rarely in that situation.
Yeah, I was going to say, it doesn't seem like you at all.
But I could feel I was on that night, and I was quite an interesting position to be in.
Yeah. But you're talking about art washing and like moving away from the PR stuff because it's just, well, it's art washing essentially.
Yes, but also I think I also selfishly believe that the impact of art is long term.
Yeah.
It's also same with sustainability. Like if you believe in culture, if you believe in sustainability, you're not a short term person.
It's a long game.
It's always a long game. So I actually don't think you get the best. Yes, you get your click on social, but you don't get the best of what art is. Culture, as you know, permeates in communities. It permeates in conversation. It changes the narrative of the place and helps reshaping it. All those things takes time.
Yeah.
So it's also about showing to your clients you won't get the best value if you're short term thinker.
Yeah.
And I think that's the biggest challenge at large with the politics is that so much of it is short term. So how do you implement a thinking that is long term?
Yeah.
But most of what I do will give a very, a big impact long term. Like, as you know, you were part of that special lunch.
I was thinking about
also
that.
Felt sorry because you were very sick on that day, but therefore extra special that you were part of the postpartum lunch.
Yeah.
Well, we launched the very first sculpture representing postpartum, but you see, this sculpture is still having an impact today, like months after. So it's showing to your clients, like, don't do it for the short term, do it properly.
Yeah.
So and we've published a paper about this, like the measurement of this impact is incredible. Highest triggered change on postpartum care, even depression in men, because it's 1 out of 8 who have postpartum depression as well.
Yeah.
Like and a whole rethinking around how do we go about postpartum care. So it's about education. It's about constantly showing that yes, of course, like it's easy to be short-termist, but actually the biggest joys, the biggest rewards are always sitting in the long term.
Yeah, absolutely. Thinking back to, like, I guess what is permanent in our public art space, and this doesn't necessarily need to be London specific, so I know that you work internationally. Do you think that outside of your agency, more public art that's popping up is having a sort of, is moving towards a more progressive angle, or do you think it's still very much like men, maybe not on horses anymore, no one's doing that, but like that same sort of genre, I guess?
Well, I think I was at a dinner with investors and entrepreneurs several weeks back, and I was the only female, which is very rare because things have changed. Normally, we are multiples of us. And a third question, because it's an intimate dinner, goes, aren't we all glad that the whole diversity agenda and B Corp was a fad? With literally every single one of them being like, my God, it's a relief. It's out of our head of terms. It's out of our concerns, right?
God.
And on the one hand, I was like, praising of the honesty, because, they were just offering me directly what they were believing in, which I think is interesting for me.
Yeah.
And they obviously know all my opinions on the B Corp side.
Of course.
But I think, as you know, currently when it comes to politics and the media, I don't think the progressive agenda has won. I think if you look at it as a cultural war, I think we've lost.
Yeah.
I think it's really time that we unite and try and battle again and think of it as a cultural war because unfortunately so much of the media is now pushing the total opposite agenda.
Yeah.
I think in terms of art, I think the art world is in a really complex position because it's coming at a time where they are challenged economically.
Yeah.
Like I mentioned, there's massive public cuts for both institutions and mega players in the art world.
Yeah.
And I'm sure you've seen that with the Venice Biennale, right?
Yeah.
Where you had the Russian pavilion and the Israeli pavilion. And you're in a place where the art world is desperate for funding, which governments have put the art world in that place as well. Like all those public cuts have created it. But I also feel the art world is at risk of losing what it stands for by not standing more strongly on specific value or taking more position. And I think the Venice Biennale was a very good example where, it needs to stand up against crime. I think you can say, okay, politically, I want to be apolitical for quite moderate parties that I can understand as a thinking.
Yeah.
But I think you need to stand against crime. You need to stand about what the UN is standing against for. And I think the fact that you're not standing against that shows that I think the art world is losing its cultural relevance. And I hope that for my generation changes that, because we can't gain the trust and the votes of people to think that we are a sector worth entering that represents people if we don't stand for certain ideals and certain values. But I'm sure I would not be in the majority of people who say that in my sector. I have said it, and obviously my business is very different. But I think that, the art world is losing its audiences, and we will lose the next generation if we don't just stand for things. That's my complete conviction on it.
Yeah.
I get the financial stress, but as you know, it's like, it's always hard, and we both run a business. My God, it's hard sometimes to reject a contract that might save a couple of months of cash flow. I completely get it. Equally, this is such an easy thing. If you can be easily bought, then that's it. You've lost your cultural value.
100%. 100%, because then you're just giving in to whatever it is that somebody who has no, I guess, like, creative expression or opinion outside of your own ones.
Exactly.
That's a shame.
Exactly.
And especially when you think about it, that wealth is like consolidated across a few people, then like all the world just becomes a reflection of like that small group of, whatever.
Yeah, and that's always been also the dynamic of the art world, where out of a 2.5 trillion sector, there's a creative sector, which is huge. You have 65 billion, that's the art world.
Yeah.
And then from that, the majority is in the top tier. So blue chip galleries, major auction houses. Again, why the starving artists, the majority of them is below minimum wage. So you have enormous inequalities already within that sector. That's why I think ethical values should be even more held high.
Yeah.
Because of those inequalities, you need to behave well, you need to lead by example.
Yeah.
If you're already in a position of privilege. But the art world does elevate who matters historically. And that's in monuments and historical bronze sculptures. And that's also in museums. So it has a different role in a sense, because Coca-Cola is this non-stop visual pollution and obviously detrimental to your mental health. But the art world will still say, to that kid subconsciously who just walk down the street, that who has power.
Yeah.
And you will never have that.
Yeah.
Because you're not included. This is not your collective belief. This is not who you belong to.
Yes.
So that sense of belonging, that sense of power dynamic, that sense of history and who tells history, that's the art world. So that's a huge importance still. I mean, representation in museums, it's obvious to say that as you walk in, there's only a certain type of people that's represented. I mentioned it obviously with bronze sculptures, but that's the same. It's a very small definition of success, which is white male privilege, military conquest, or very much tied to the monarchy. And the rest is completely, I mean, we're just literally passing a sculpture as we speak, but it's the rest is not addressed. And I think for me, it's about constantly reminding you that therefore the rest of the people don't matter.
They're not important.
They're not important.
Yeah. I have a really good example of something that kind of on the topic of what you're speaking about, that I realized this when I first moved to London like 15 years ago, but it's basically the road that runs between sort of like Parliament and like Downing Street and up into, I can't remember, it's Whitehall or something, I don't know. And on that road, it's like exactly what you're saying. White man and horse, Winston Churchill, white man and horse. And there is one monument that is about women.
Yeah.
And it's honoring the women of World War II.
Yeah.
But it's not actually a woman. It's just like,
No
it's like
face.
a clothing rail with like their different uniforms hung up on it.
Yeah.
And I'm like, how can this be the only monument here speaking about women, and it's their fucking laundry,
and they
like
run,
it's not
they
even
run the country. Then
it's crazy. It's crazy. And there's this really incredible quote that's like, if you don't know your history, you're doomed to repeat it, right? And I think that there's just such a risk of like, if we're excluding all of these things that are quote unquote not important around social impact, social equity, environmental justice, all these things, that we're just going to continue to get into these worse and worse situations for ourselves because we just don't normalize understanding what's better for people.
One of my favorite topic at university in France was historiography. And it perked my interest when, the French published the Black Code, which is the most, basically legalizes racism back under François Ier in the 15th century. But no one talks about it, and it's not in the history books. And because the French will talk about the Lumière and how they created the whole, act of freedom and rights, right? And so I was explained that was historiography. Historiography is the understanding of who made history, what's being left out, and was not being included and for what reason. Another example is de Gaulle, after World War II in France, told the French people that most people had not collaborated and had supported the resistance, when he knew for a fact that was wrong, but he wanted to avoid civil war. But what he committed to saying is 2 generations down the line, it had to be rectified. But he didn't. He wanted to avoid that civil war. That's historiography.
It down. It's crazy.
Is to make sure that people don't fight straight away, but then it's rectified. But I think that really perked my interest, and I think ironically that's what I do with public art.
Yeah.
When we looked about what's not discussed.
Yeah.
We actually just won a project yesterday that I literally cried when I got it.
Oh.
It's the suffragette movement on your statement of women was led a lot by Scottish working women, working class women. And so much of it is understood through the upper class, especially in England. And so we're doing the first monument for this in Scotland. And there's a great diversity of stories on women who took substantially more risk. You know, it was their pay, their job, they were exiled community-wise. And they were partially associated, they were made homeless. They were also removed their kids from them. It's a really difficult story, and in terms of how they basically fought for gender rights. And they had everything to lose because they had so little power in society. So we've been commissioned to do that monument. I initially am so emotional about it because I adore the importance of that storytelling. But that goes back to, again, we see so many paintings about, and they've done such a great job about the upper class women who fought for this. So little of it is done about the ones that were more working class. So it's about class too, not just about the gender. It's about who, again, is not represented.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm just thinking as you're talking, what can, the everyday person who doesn't work in art or isn't getting a chance to think about this in their day-to-day, what can they learn? What can we learn from all of this? How can we apply some of this thinking to our lives, right?
Well, I hope from our old chats that people see that art is so much more than something that's pretty on the wall.
Yeah.
It's very much endorsing someone's values, stories, hope for the future. It is about hope ultimately. It all goes back to solar punk.
And it all goes back to solar punk.
It's about joy and it's about hope.
Yeah.
It's lovely to have this Jeff Koons balloons, but really we over it. I think consumeristic art is also, I would like it.
We didn't even talk about that.
I don't think any random person buys a Jeff Koons balloons because it's very expensive. But if you could stop endorsing that would be fantastic.
Okay.
And going more towards sustainable practices will make me really happy.
Yes.
But also seeing that, therefore, you're not just buying art; you're buying a future of a world filled with stories that you believe in, and spending a bit of attention to this. Yes, you might want something on top of your sofa, but again, what story does that tell about us? How do you make sure that you endorse someone that's telling a story that you would like your kids to grow up in?
Yeah. God, I didn't even think about that, the consumeristic side of art.
Jeff Koons balloons is I'm sure it's a commentary too, because obviously that's the way he likes to frame it historically.
Yeah.
But do we need more big balloons in the middle of our cities that we can take pictures as selfies in it? I think
Instagram's crazy.
I think we're done.
Yeah.
I think enough balloons. Jeff Koons had his statement at some point. It was a statement. We don't want any more. Thank you. We want to move on.
Yeah. So fun. Or even on the other side, right? And I'm not shading people, but everybody will get their art from I don't know, Home Goods or whatever, Yeah. And it's is that really what you want? And
it all goes back to the paying process. I know that it takes a bit of time to look through Instagram or look at artists, but you can generally get artists for a few £100 that are good.
Art has to be expensive.
Exactly. And but it is a bit painful. Instead of going straight to a website, you have to research it. But I think also the difference it might make to that individual. Yeah. It is that extra pain of the process. Yeah. Everything is about the extra pain of the process.
Yeah, I had a guest on recently who said something don't steal the struggle, Yeah. And the more that we're allowing ourselves to just click and collect, the less that we become attached to our things, that we understand their stories. And even if, I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy something to support the artist, but just understanding the artist and understanding that artwork is going to make you appreciate it so much more, that it doesn't just become a piece of trending fast furniture in your house. It's something that you will love and cherish for a long time because you understand it.
Exactly. Yeah. We're story people. So it's we love stories. Buying a work from an artist that you've taken the time to pick, then, you know, when you have friends over, you can just talk about, you know, this artist and why, and you feel empowered to talk about it.
Yeah.
And it becomes a story that then you share. I mean, the whole reason so many of us as human beings exist is that love for sharing stories.
Yeah.
So also don't remove yourself from telling a really good story,
Yeah.
which is at the end of the day what is really lovely with art as well.
Yeah, amazing. Okay, so we're going to get to my favorite part of the show, which is called ethical or questionable.
Yes.
I'm going to give you some topics, and you
Yes.
have to tell me if you think they're ethical or questionable.
Go.
Okay. Number 1, Frieze Art Fair. Fitting because we're at Regent's Park. They do it here, don't they?
I know, they do. Very fitting. Look at your timing. It's spot on. The CEO, Simon, funded the Good Business Act. So, and same with one of the ex-director, Victoria, was now the head of National Portrait Gallery.
Yeah.
Big advocate in terms of sustainability.
Yeah.
But I would lean in to them being fantastic leadership, but still being questionable because you are encouraging people to do temporary shipping and flying endlessly to a specific destination. But that's why I want to separate the leadership, which I think is actually leading by example, with a very problematic setup.
Yeah.
Which I don't think I will be able to solve. I think it's a very difficult one to solve because by definition you want to encourage everyone to take that flight for just a few days and to ship those works really quickly. And sometimes on plane, which is the worst, you know, not on boats.
You know, I asked this one without like any opinion because I don't really understand like what Frieze Art Fair is. Like, I imagine it's like, you know, we all go to COP and it's like one of our big sustainability conferences. And I imagine it's the same. It's a big art show. People come from around the world to show their art, try to sell it, try to get noticed, try to connect with the community. And that happens a few different times, different places.
And I could therefore have answered the exact same thing with COP. I decided to stop doing COP. I adored COP Glasgow because we did that amazing piece with Olaf Elias and Robert Montgomery. And I traveled by train and it felt right, and we work with communities. But then I went to the one in Azerbaijan.
I didn't go to that one.
And I was like, you know what, Marine, I think it's time to wrap this one up. And I feel this is also where I'm open-minded to circumstances. I think Glasgow was so spot on. It felt right, you know. We were in the mud, we traveled by train. It's like the grassroots organizations that were integrated, I felt were really strong. And same with the art program. But I think Azerbaijan for me is where I was like, okay, I was just part of a lobbying group and a bit of PR and comms, and I need to remove myself from this ASAP. So it doesn't mean inherently the concept is wrong, but I think they are clearly executions that are problematic. I think Frieze, I'm really sitting on the fence about this because what a great thing to celebrate the cultural sector. It's the number 2 biggest sector in the UK. You get to like have also amazing arts in Regent's Park for several months thanks to that. There's so many positives that come from that. But I think if you look at net shipping and flights impact, it is very problematic.
I like your take on this. Is like the idea is phenomenal, but maybe we're in a place now in the world where we could rethink the execution.
Yes. Well, I think Azerbaijan was
for all of these for all of these things.
Yes. More Glasgow and less Azerbaijan.
Okay, I love it. Okay, next, nude art.
I think, as you know, I'm pretty big on against visual biases against women and objectification. That is non-stop the visuals we love. So if it's yet something that is objectifying us, no. If it's something that actually celebrates all forms and celebrates us, like I'm definitely I've married Irish, so he would tell you I'm very French, and I definitely feel very fine walking around with very little on, which drives my poor Irish husband completely crazy. He's like behind me closing every single blind in the house, burning smoothly to make sure no one sees. But I feel, because I generally think a body is a body. I think it's in a time where, you know, there's so much conversation about the 90s slim culture being back on, an obsession on female form. I think seeing all types of nudity will be great. Or probably will relax us because we're also imperfect in many ways. So
you think more nudity?
But it seems that the nudity that we see is objectifying.
Okay.
So I think it's how do we get in a place that is not yet again something that's produced for objectification's sake.
I love that. I love this take.
It's a difference between existing as a body that is nude versus being objectified as one. So I'm happy to exist as one. I just, sadly, I think so much of it is objectification.
That's a shame. Okay. Art as a protest.
Yes, I feel it's really interesting. It goes back to that invitation I had this week, because there was a collective of artists that would believe in art as protest. And I still like to think as art as a medium that is artistic, not straight away the acts that it triggers. I still see them as sizing differently, but equally, I see brilliant examples. You shared one on fundraising for funds, and actually, like, great. Like, I think if it's social change, but I think I probably will call it more social change than art, and that's okay. But probably social change by artists. I guess I need a bit of art within the art conversation, not straight away the act.
Okay.
As a person, because again, like you, I love art history and I love the production of the creative artifact, but I will always also be proud, supportive of social change. So I'm happy to support that.
Okay. Yeah, I did send you this article. I'm quite obsessed with that at the moment. It's this like art duo who they do all sorts of crazy stuff, I guess. And one of their stunts, I suppose, versus like, I mean, they call it art, but I guess it's like a stunt, right?
For me, it's a social change stunt.
Yeah, they blew up a van full of banknotes to protest.
I can't tell the conversation this week, but that was very much around this note. and this is why I can't say a word, because I don't want to reveal. But it was yes, I think that is, for me, I found it's about social change, it's about activism.
Yeah,
it's less about art, but it's artists doing it, and I think that's what I relate with it.
Does it need? Is a question on that? Is it because it's like kind of impermanent that it makes it not art? Do you know what I mean?
For me, it's more that it is more rooted in the protest than the art.
I see.
For me, I see it more as like a protest on the streets.
Yeah.
I see it as that.
Yeah.
And I think, I am in a world where so many high net worths are not paying tax and using very complex financial mechanism to avoid taxes.
Yeah.
So I think I'm always very moderated when people talk about breaking the rules, because I'm like, in reality, I see wealthy people breaking the rules all the time.
All the time.
They just have better lawyers and the content and financial teams to do that, right?
Yeah.
So I am, I don't have a judgment towards that. I mean, unless someone is obviously hurt.
Yeah.
I mean, the suffragette movement, which we'll be depicting, sadly, for 50 years, they tried to peacefully obtain rights. At that point, they realized it was not working. So they said, these are the words, just like the Irish Revolution. And they started to blow up post boxes and to actually do terrorist attacks. Specifically looking also not to harm people. But the problem that we are in the world that is sadly sometimes not responding unless there's violence. I am not going up and blowing up post boxes, but in the context of the suffragette movement, sadly, after 50 years, that's what they had to resort to. And unfortunately, and there was a really powerful statement by one of them, they said the only language that men understand is the language of war. If we don't go into war, they won't listen. And they got proven right. And I think that's always the issue that you see with this, where they maybe have a point, but I'm not there yet. I am still a big mind person that think the system can change from within, but maybe they're right. Maybe that they can't. Because I think in that, we forget that the suffragette movement resulted into someone dying on King's Day at Ascot, overridden by horses and basically committed suicide. For that to be on the front page of the news. So it's obviously all of that has been nicely removed.
Yeah.
But we're talking deaths, we're talking blow up post boxes, we're talking blowing up houses. It was terrorist.
Yeah. I mean, when I think of the suffragettes, I just think of the ladies with their little flags in their hands.
Yes, but unfortunately, something that they also obliterated from this country, they used to beat them to the ground, those women, after they were protesting. And that's the thing, is violence informed violence. And I think that's how they got to that solution. But something that is definitely not shown is after they did all their beautiful protests, in their lovely dresses, they will send the cops to beat them to the ground. Also not in the history book. See, I told you, historiography is a great topic.
It is. All right, last one. Here we go. Banksy. Ethical or questionable?
So, as you know, I managed a gallery of civilized ideas. We discovered him when I was 21. So they had a pretty big professional divorce. So Banksy inherited, Civilized Ideas, my first boss, inherited over 250 paintings. So most of the exhibition you see comes from Steve.
Okay.
Banksy has a company called Pictures on Walls. For me, this is a lot of PR stunt.
Yeah.
He hasn't, I think it was great at the time because it created conversations, and he still creates a level of conversation.
Yeah.
I think, he's responsible for getting new audiences into the art sector, which I highly value.
Yeah.
But we need to go beyond PR stunts. Like, it's just now, it's all about the long term.
Yeah.
Yes, again, it gets crowds coming in for that Instagram post.
Yeah.
But clearly we're seeing that our side, on the progressive side, has done great, like, on diversity. Everyone thinks that, like, we've put every single woman on covers and diversity funders on the cover. The numbers have not partially shifted.
No.
Same with funding, same with power seats. Like, so I think it's a good example here of, it seems like this is not working.
Yeah.
PR stunts, we need to move past them.
Yeah.
So he was great for his time.
Yeah.
I think we need to go beyond it. By definition. I think your attention, you feel good, you take a picture next to it, and you're like, look at me, I'm such a great guy, and then you continue your same habits.
Yeah.
And I think it's about, there's a great book called The Power of Habits, but ultimately it's about visual habits. It's about impregnating our values within current visual habits and current visual routines and current visual environment.
Yeah.
If you don't make it a fabric of your everyday, then you just make it a cool Instagram post, and then you will just reorder on Amazon, and then that's it, right?
Yeah, that's it. Right, guys, that's the episode with Marine. I thought she was absolutely brilliant. I hope you did too. I loved all of her hot takes. I mean, they were absolutely incredible, right? On nude art and Banksy, and the suffragettes, like, did not see those things coming, but alas, here they were. So I have really left this episode thinking about the historiography piece. I don't know if I said that right. And who gets to decide, like, what we say about our society to our own society, but also to future generations, right? And what does that mean for everybody else? Like, what are the stories we want to record? What's important to us? And how do we ensure that those lessons and stories continue to be passed on amongst ourselves and for future generations, right? And I think part of that, for me, at home, personally, my own little bubble, is like investing in art that represents, my worldview, amongst other things. So anyways, guys, that is a wrap on the episode, but I really hope you enjoyed it. Please let me know in the comments or via DM what you thought. And I cannot wait to share more with you guys. So until next week, we will see you then. Thanks again for tuning into this week's episode of Ethically Questionable. For more info, thoughts, ideas, conversation starters, you can follow me, your host, Jamila, at Jamila Faye.